Hello, welcome to Endowed Empire, to endow and enlighten you. And we're also creating a space for you to manifest your goals and uplift your soul. Today, we're going to be talking with a good friend, Angelina, about her growing up in the foster care system and how she's dealt with that, including with how she was able to find some of her siblings and her family now. So let's get right into it. Hey.
Hi.
So me and Angelina go way back. We were just talking like over a decade of knowing
hmm
each other. Came up together in the airline industry. And what I loved about her is she give it to you straight, no chaser.
Nope, that's right.
Like to know Angelina is to know Angelina, honey. Like she is who she is. She don't try to sugarcoat for nobody. And it's actually something that's very envious when you're surrounded by a lot of people that are fake and and all that. But before we kick off, so I like to start off with my affirmations for the day. And I felt like this was very apropos, and is I choose to create an atmosphere of peace and safety for myself. And I feel like this is like really for you and the things that you've been with, like perfect, because I know now you're very conscious about like who you're around and your energy and stuff like that. So I thought that was a perfect affirmation
That is
for
a good one.
today.
That is a good one. Great one.
Yeah. So to start off, Angelina, where are you from?
I was born in New York.
Mhm.
Uh, Grew up in Pennsylvania, went to high school in Pennsylvania, moved back to New York when I was 19, and now I've been in New Jersey for about 12 years.
Okay. So how did you even enter into the foster care system at 16?
When my mother was a heroin addict, and I was born in Brooklyn in 77. And I don't really know the full story of was I given up? Did she test dirty? It's very like watered down and it's very unclear.
Mhm.
I was adopted the following year. I spent the first year of my life in a detox facility in New York. And then I was adopted when I was almost two by a family that lived in Queens. I
Mhm.
lived there until we moved to Pennsylvania. And then when I was 16, I was having some behavioral issues, some problems, at home.
Right.
My adoptive parents signed an emergency 30 days for me to go into the system. At that point, Children and Youth in Pennsylvania now does a home study, counseling for the parents, all kinds of things.
Mhm.
And they refused. So I became a ward of the state for until I turned 18.
Oh wow. So do you remember like so you don't remember what got you put into the system like with your
Um,
mom?
there was a suicide attempt, and I
Okay.
had been hospitalized prior.
Mhm.
And my parents, I'd been in counseling, but my adoptive mother wasn't very receptive. I felt like I was doing a lot of work and she wasn't. And so they wanted me to be hospitalized again. And I said no. And then
Mhm.
there was no resolution. I was right away. The school got involved. And so then it was just my adopted mother signed the 30-day emergency taken out of the home. But because they didn't
Mhm.
participate, I had to go to court. And then I ended up staying in the system until I turned 18.
So when you were adopted by them, like there's not like a grace period where you can kind of tell whether or not you want to stay with these
I
people
lived with them from a baby, well, from one until I was 16. No,
or
the issue
okay.
is that I was one of eight adopted, and we were all kind of special, I'd
Mhm.
say. Parents of addiction, a lot of mental illness, a lot of things. And I just don't think that my adoptive parents were equipped. I don't remember talking about any of those things. I didn't know my biological name until I was 14. I didn't know anything about my mother. I didn't know anything about heroin addiction. I didn't know anything about being born addicted to heroin, what that does to your neurological system, behavioral issues, so much that I think I should have known. And I started becoming curious 14, 15, 16. And then I started acting out to, get some sort of attention to, I had all these answers, about my mother, about my father, about where I came from.
Right.
And so that spiraled into what it was. And I never went back.
Right. So the parents weren't given, do you think they weren't given the tools to help you, or they just didn't utilize?
They were very strict religious, and I think they thought Jesus and prayer. I don't know, think about it now in 2021, which mental illness is something that isn't as talked about as much as it should be, but it's getting there. Addiction, I just don't think they were equipped. I have forgiven them. They're not in my life. But, I think that I obviously wanted to know, so I had a lot of questions and I wasn't getting any answers.
Right. Now, what got you to that point where you were able to forgive them? I know that's something a lot of us struggle with after dealing with childhood trauma.
You got to watch that Oprah special about how she forgave. They have like a special about how she forgave her father. And I watched that many, many times over the quarantine. And I just, it kind of, I just don't think that I don't think they're bad people. And, finding my siblings and learning, people have it so much worse. You know what I mean? My story is, bad, but it's not as bad as others. And so I just don't think that they were equipped. I don't think they're bad people. I just don't think they knew. And it wasn't just me. It was my other brothers and sisters. We never talked about, some of them were not babies. They were 13, 14, 11. They had known their real families. They had seen some stuff. And sometimes you got to talk it out. And we didn't talk about any of it.
Oh, wow.
And that's
so
not
do you
healthy.
have a relationship? Do you have a relationship with the adopted siblings at all?
Not really.
Or after
no.
So
social
what happened?
Media, is that really?
Yeah.
Is that really a relationship sometimes?
Right. So when you became a ward of the state at 16, are you sent to a dorm? Like, how does that work?
I was placed in a foster home, and then that didn't work out. And I was placed in 35 different places in 2 years. I went to 4 different high schools.
Wow. And that was because you have behavioral issues?
Behavioral issues. And, I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people want babies. A lot of people want little kids,
Mm-hmm.
There was some behavioral issues. Absolutely. I went to one family and they were a specific religion and I didn't want to go to their church. And, absolutely. There was definitely, I can take responsibility for that now. I was going through a lot. And at the end of the day, I was still a child, and I had all these feelings and all of these questions. And, I called my adopted parents on a reg and they just were, I left behind siblings. I left behind a 14-year-old sister who didn't understand why I left her behind. And it wasn't really like that. You know what I mean? So it was, it was difficult. There's different things. I don't know about foster care now, but there's foster homes where you go live with a family and other foster kids or their kids. There are group homes that are like residential houses in the community with like staff 24 hours. There are institutions. So I saw it all in the 2 years, but it made me realize, like, there were kids that, disgusting stuff, girl, disgusting stuff, like 9-year-olds that had been raped and sodomized their whole life by their parents, and just really, really gritty stuff. And it made me feel blessed that I didn't have to experience any of that. And I didn't have to spend my entire childhood in the system. Because those kids get real messed up,
Oh, okay. So you never personally yourself experienced like the horrific kind of stories that we usually
there was some abuse, but
hear
not what I saw some stuff. I really saw some stuff. They placed me.
Can you tell like the parents that are doing it for the money? or
A lot of it
is it
was
like
not.
they're
I
just
went to a couple of individual homes, but most of it were institutions and group homes and facility. Like, so in the Poconos back then, now this was night. I don't even know if this group home even exists. They were shipping kids from inner city Philadelphia to the Poconos. So I was in a group home with 35 different African American, Spanish. I was the only white person in the entire 35. I mean, and these, a lot of pregnancies. These kids were smoking,
yeah.
confiscating, getting crack into the building, and I mean,
Oh,
the
wow.
food was atrocious. The staff was
Yeah.
afraid. There was. I mean, these kids were
Wow.
like thugs, and I was like this little kid
Right.
from not equipped. So
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
saw a lot of stuff. I had
Mm.
no
How long
idea
were
that the
you
kids from
there?
Philly would end up in the Poconos, but
Yeah.
there are different parts of the country where there are so many foster kids and not enough placements.
Right. Now as far as so they're not giving you guys any type of life skills. It's like just you're
No,
just being boarded through the
no.
institution.
You go to school, you go to high school, and then you come home, and then it's that kind of deal. My senior year, I was involved in a program called Independent Living. They gave me a check for
Mhm.
$500. They taught me how to do laundry. They taught me how to write a check and make a grocery list. And I think they gave me a telephone and some towels and because there was no cell phones back
Right.
then. And that was it. I found an apartment in the newspaper and I walked 25 minutes to high school, 45 minutes to my job. I had a full time, 32-hour job at the time. And I just, did what I had to
This
do.
was at 17?
18
18.
I had my own apartment. I lived with the rent was $240 back then.
Wow.
I,
Oh, dude.
I found it in the newspaper and I got an apartment.
That's not
There was
existent.
there was no public transportation in that area back then. So
Yeah.
I walked to work and walked to school and graduated from a high school that
Mhm.
I only was in for 4 months, and that was it. And then I moved back to New York when I was 98 and became a flight attendant, and that was it. I never looked back. I never went back to the Poconos.
Wow. So Kiki says the system has only one focus, and that's placing children in a home. I think God only stared in foster care for 1 month. Salute to you for sharing your story.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
I mean,
um,
there are children that spend their whole lives in foster care and they see horrific things. And it depends on, excuse me, where you are in the country. Like I
yeah.
said, it's so overrun back then. It was so overrun in Philadelphia that they were shipping kids you know, out of the air 2 hours away to the
Right.
Poconos. It's
Right.
it's a definite it's a definite problem in this country. And then when the children turn 18, that's a definite. There's the statistics are unreal about
Mhm.
what happens to kids when they turn 18. I was lucky.
Yeah.
um
So during this time, were you starting to search for your real family?
no, I didn't start searching until 2016. A friend got me the DNA test,
Mm-hmm.
Ancestry, for Christmas, and
Mm-hmm.
spit in the cup, sent it in.
Yeah.
Well, because I have this Italian name and I was raised Italian, but I have a European look. So I always
Mm-hmm.
kind of questioned about that. Every
Yeah.
single time you go to the doctor, they ask you this, this, this. I'm adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have beautiful eyes. I remember, I don't know, I was 23. I went to, and you don't know when it's going to hit you. I went to
Yeah.
the eye doctor, and the lady was like, "You have beautiful eyes. Did you get them from your mother or your father?" I just started bawling,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
bawling. So you
Yeah.
never know when the emotion's going to hit you. Not having those answers really affects you because you just don't
Mm-hmm.
know. You can't answer. Are you Russian? I don't know. Have you ever had
Right.
cancer in your family? I don't know. So I
That's a
did the
good
ans.
point. I never even realized that, like your medical history, your
Yes.
yeah. Wow, that's a lot of stuff we take for granted knowing.
I didn't even, I didn't end up being addicted to someone, born addicted to heroin. When I learned all of the stuff that I learned, it had such an impact on me that I think that maybe that's why I didn't turn to the streets and I didn't turn to drugs. It's so easy for somebody else to judge somebody else's shoes, but I mean, the statistics show all these kids on the street, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so then I did the ancestry test. I found a cousin who was in the similar situation as me. She had been adopted. Her mother, so my mother is one of three women that I know of, three different separate women that were adopted, never knew each other.
Wow.
And so I've met cousins, first cousins, my siblings.
So are you Italian?
Yes, I'm half Italian. And then we think that my father was Italian because none of my other half siblings have Italian in their blood, but my mother wouldn't. So I met all these cousins and whatnot. My brothers and sisters had known about me. So my mother was born in Buffalo, which is like 6-7 hours away. She was living in Manhattan, Brooklyn. I guess that was a good place to party in the 70s. And then after me, she went back to Buffalo, met this gentleman, and then she had my brothers and sisters. And so they had known about me when they were 18, 19, whatever, and had been looking for me on those like websites.
Oh.
I didn't look because there was a 50-50 chance. I've known drug addicts. I knew my story. There was a 50-50 chance that she was going to be, this great mother that I wanted, or she was going to be a junkie. And so obviously finding her was the latter.
Right. So when you heard from the cousins, did they know about her, or they just knew?
No, because my mother was one of three different women that were adopted. Does that make sense? So my cousins didn't
with each other.
No, they didn't. They never knew about each other. So I'm sure my grandma's got a great story, and there are family members researching that. But yeah, so my mother had two sisters that she never knew about. One is died at 46 of alcohol related. She's got 7 children. Some of them I've met, some of them I haven't. And then the other one has a couple of children. She lives in Washington. I've not met her yet, but we've been in touch. And I have a couple cousins on that side. So,
and then your mom had how many kids?
8.
8.
And there's a half brother or full brother. She was with some gentleman in Manhattan for a couple of years, and he took custody of my brother, and then she had me. So obviously, I'm assuming they don't know about me either.
Wow. Okay.
But the stories detailed is that he was extremely abusive to her. So, and I'm sure he was, when I talked to her on the phone about it, she said that she was very afraid of him. Yeah. So I don't know if it was the dementia. She had some dementia towards the end, or, I mean, she could have been lying. She gave me some fake names. Who knows?
Yeah. So finding out like her siblings, everyone has addiction. So addiction is hereditary in your family then? Probably?
I'd say so. Addiction, mental illness. Absolutely.
So did you get help at some point eventually for like mental?
I'm in and out. I'd say I'm high functioning,
Yeah.
The mental health, don't even get me started on the mental health in this country. Don't even get me started.
Right.
There's a lot of challenges to it. So
right. And there's not really, so there's not special assistance for adopted kids like once you're out of the system, you're out of the system. Like they don't do anything else.
No, and I didn't reach out for services after I turned 18. I don't know if I didn't know about them or they weren't available. And
probably the experiences you had so far, you didn't really have too much high hopes for it, maybe.
No, I just I never thought about that, actually. That's like I'm sure there's more. Again, it's where you live in the country. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure there are resources in New York City or maybe California. I'm sure that the percentage of homeless, think about where there's lots of homeless young people living on the streets. So I guess it just depends. I lived in the Poconos and I didn't know of any resource. I didn't have insurance. I didn't have insurance until I started flying. So that was, 20, 21, so
Mhm.
from 18 to 21, there was no going to the doctor, no going to the dentist, none of that.
Mm. So once you got in touch with your cousins, how did you find your siblings?
They had been, so then this had such an impact, and everyone who I grew up with had known that I was adopted, my story. So people just started doing all this research, and they had found them on, my brothers and sisters have been looking for me since like 2012 on a website like adoption.org, find your family members. And they knew my biological name, and they knew Angelina's, I was not born Angelina. So they had known my name, and my friend took a snapshot of this online. I went to social media, found my sister, and then that was it. Then the ball, rolled from there. I've been to Buffalo. I go to Buffalo at least once a year. I reach out to everyone. Some people are receptive and some people aren't. I would have thought that everyone would be so much closer, but I guess when you have a life of such chaos and trauma, you just do your own thing. And that's what a therapist told me. Not everybody's interested. So I reach out to everyone. And if people are interested, I send Christmas cards and stuff like that. But some people are receptive and some people aren't.
Angelina, hold on. There's like, I think the Wi-Fi is bad right now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You're stuck.
Oh.
We're gonna exit out the studio, come out, and then go back in, and we're going to go into the second half for Angelina. Be right back.
I was that. Can I get a hit? We good?
So we're still live. Apparently, Angelina is having some issues, or I'm having issues with our Wi-Fi right now. So, um, while we try to get that together, if you have any questions, make sure you comment and share about any questions you have about the foster care system, um, how Angelina was able to find her family. We might have to do a part 2 to this at another time. Be back in a second. Unfortunately, we're having tech. Oh, wait. She's back.
Hi.
So,
Can you see me? I can see
Angelina,
you and hear you.
it's like it's making a little loading sound.
Oh, I don't have that on my end.
You know. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a part 2 because I'm learning a lot of stuff about her that I didn't even know, and I think that is important for other people to hear. So we're definitely gonna schedule that, and I don't know if she hear me. Thank
Yeah,
you
I
so
can
much
hear
for
you.
sharing your story. Okay, thank you so much, and we're definitely going to finish this discussion again. I love you.
Love you. Kiss Kita for me.
Bye.
Bye.